Closer look now at what happened inside a Minneapolis daycare where a woman allegedly tried to hang a toddler. KARE 11's Lou Raguse walks us through the charges.
Natalia KARE faces attempted second-degree murder, a charge carrying up to 20 years in prison for what she's accused of doing inside the daycare she ran on Humboldt Avenue in South Minneapolis. According to court papers, a father of a 3-year-old was dropping off his child Friday when KARE wasn't acting right. He told police KARE told him she couldn't take it anymore and told him to look at what she did. The court papers say that father heard a baby crying in the basement and found him hanging with a noose made out of child-sized tights wrapped around his neck, his face discolored. The baby boy survived. His mother told police the boy started going to the daycare 3 weeks ago and had a cold but was otherwise healthy. KARE also faces charges for what happened after that disturbing discovery. Court papers say she hit Salvador Lima, a married father of 2, and dragged him for 10 blocks. He's in the HCMC burn unit. And she's charged for hitting Jacob Kerrigan, whose leg was broken when KARE's minivan hit him while he rode his bike to work. He now has a metal rod permanently placed in his leg. Family members living with KARE aren't sharing what they think might have led to that disturbing morning, saying only that the daycare provider no longer lives at the house. Lou Raguse, KARE 11 News.
Ended with a suspect shot. KARE 11's Lou Raguse is following that story. Lou, what do you know?
Well, Randy, this happened between 2 and 3 in the morning. Police were onto these suspects as soon as they left that home in Prior Lake, but police say they wouldn't stop, leading to a chase across the snow-filled roads up Highway 169.
I'm asking you to leave.
The first shooting scene is on tribal land within the Shakopee Metawakanton Sioux community in Prior Lake. The victim, family members tell us, is James Herron, a tribe member and relative of Norman Crooks, one of the Shakopee Metawakanton founders.
The victim at the scene of that shooting did die, so this is a homicide investigation.
Police responded and followed a vehicle leaving the Prior Lake home. After a 15-mile chase, they disabled the car just off Highway 169 and Londonderry Road in Edina.
The vehicle was occupied by 3 individuals. 2 fled and were immediately taken into custody. The remaining suspect was pursued on foot by Eden Prairie officers.
Hennepin County Sheriff Rich Stanek says that suspect fired his gun at the officers but missed. The 2 officers fired back, hitting him.
My officers were not injured. They're doing as well as can be expected.
The suspect is expected to survive his gunshot wounds. Police haven't revealed the suspected motive in the homicide. This photo from the Star Tribune shows a mask, money, and a pair of gloves on the driver's seat of the suspect's vehicle. The Shakopee Metawakanton Sioux community released a statement saying, "Today is a sad day for our community as we mourn the loss of one of our members."
And those 3 suspects aren't charged yet. State investigators are looking into the homicide in Scott County. The Hennepin County Sheriff's Office is investigating the officer-involved shooting portion of this incident. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, Lou.
A man is dead after a shooting, and the suspect ended up leading police on a chase.
That suspect allegedly shot at 2 Eden Prairie police officers. Those officers fired back, hitting him. KARE 11's Lou Raguse is live in the newsroom with details. Lou?
Julie, the officers weren't hurt, and the suspect they shot is expected to survive. But again, 1 person is dead. A victim shot in his home in Prior Lake on tribal land. That victim is identified to us by family members as James Herron, a tribe member and relative of Norman Crooks, one of the Shakopee Metawakanton founders. Police say that he was targeted by 3 suspects, although they haven't revealed a motive. Now, a photo taken by the Star Tribune shows a mask, money, and a pair of gloves on the driver's seat of the suspect's vehicle. Police chased the suspects for about 15 miles, ending just off Highway 169 in Edina. 2 of the suspects are in jail. The 3rd is recovering in the hospital from being shot by officers.
You know, this could have ended much worse for all involved, especially responding law enforcement officers.
The suspects haven't been charged yet. Those charges are expected to come out of Scott County, where state investigators are helping on the case. The Hennepin County Sheriff's Office is investigating the officer-involved shooting portion of the incident. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, Lou.
Special memorial to remember 2 Mounds View teenagers killed last week in a car crash. Police escorting buses and cars to the site after school this afternoon. The girls died on their way to school last Thursday in a crash at the intersection of County Road 96 and Highway 10, just 2 miles from school. KARE 11's Lou Raguse is live tonight with the story. Lou?
Yeah, Julie, this was coordinated by Mounds View High School, MnDOT, and Ramsey County because students were coming out here on their own since the crash and leaving flowers and other mementos on this busy intersection, potentially creating a dangerous situation. This allowed them a safe way to all come here together at once to pay their respects. 4 busloads full of kids, many more walking, hundreds all together were here remembering their classmates, Bridget Geary and Stephanie Carlson, both juniors, killed last week in that crash. Of course, this week has been unspeakably hard for these kids, but many of them who talk to me say that coming out here today together really helped them with the grieving process. There were very few words, but lots of hugs and lots of tears out here today. Basically what they did, many of them had flowers in their hands as they arrived. They each walked up to the crosses and laid them down, paid their respects, and then all together as a group came together close for one big group hug. It was a large moment of silence. One bit of good news I received today, that third victim, the survivor, Sammy Redden, she's still in the hospital, but she is stable. I'm told she's expected to live, and they are hopeful that she'll make a full recovery. She has been conscious, and that does mean, though, that she is aware of what happened to her 2 good friends. Just unspeakable. Coming up at 6, I'll share what some of these classmates said before and after the event here this afternoon. Julie?
It really is. It's just unimaginable. Thank you, Lou. A crash last week claimed the lives of 2 of their classmates. Mounds View High School juniors Bridget Geary and Stephanie Carlson were killed in a car accident Thursday morning at Highway 10 and County Road 96. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is live with a very special memorial today. Lou?
Yeah, Julie, over the weekend, someone constructed and installed these heavy-duty, professionally made crosses here at the crash site, and this afternoon they played a very special role, a memorial that allowed hundreds of classmates of those 2 victims a spot to come together and to grieve. Those classmates, more than 300 of them, symbolically walked down Highway 96 on the sidewalk along the route that their friends Bridget Geary and Stephanie Carlson would drive on their way to school. This very somber moment of silence today was coordinated by Mounds View High School, MnDOT, and Ramsey County to give these kids a safe place to arrive, 4 busloads and many of them walking, a safe place to lay flowers and to just reflect together as classmates. There were lots of tears, lots of hugs here, not so many words. It was very somber. When classes resumed this week, it was a reality check for a lot of these students who really hadn't quite grasped everything that had happened, and coming out here together brought out a lot of emotions as they paid their respects.
We really just need to give strength to each other and help their family and friends who really took this real hard, and just shows you how fast life can be taken away and how much you got to appreciate it.
Everybody needs to support. Everybody does. You need to hold a hand, hug someone, just everybody. It's nice that we're all supporting this.
Kids are devastated, they're heartbroken, they're scared. But at the same time, there's been a sense of community from neighboring schools, from far, far away schools helping us.
It's so weird to have class without them, and it's really hard because there's an empty desk in your class and you don't see them anymore, and it's really hard on the teachers and the students.
Nothing should ever happen to this 16-year-old. It's way too early.
It appears we had some technical difficulties. Well, there is controversy over a cross in one central Minnesota community. A complaint was filed to take down a cross that stands with a veterans memorial in the small town of Long Prairie. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose shows us what's being done to make sure everything stays where it is.
With its highest peak, the original flag raising on Iwo Jima.
We do a big Memorial Day, a big Veterans Day.
Take it from Long Prairie's 75-year-old Navy vet mayor. This town respects its veterans.
Oh, very much so.
Dedicated in 2002, Long Prairie's Veterans Memorial Park also features a Huey helicopter, a Vietnam Wall, and this.
This depicts the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier.
A cross on public property that it now seems everyone in town is talking about.
There's a lot of veterans that are really ticked off.
Mayor Don Rasmussen recently received this letter from a Washington, D.C. group called Americans United for Separation of Church and State.
We have received a complaint regarding a religious display.
It asks Long Prairie to take down the cross, but rather than fight them or ignore them, the city came up with a different plan: to give the city-owned parkland to the American Legion and VFW, making it private land and allowing them to keep the cross.
We were just glad it was ours and that it could stay. We could do what we wanted with it. It means everything to us.
For the city's veterans, it's a happy ending, but with a lingering question.
The person who made the initial complaint is a mystery. And that's something that bothers veterans and city leaders here in Long Prairie most of all.
They got a gripe, come and talk. Don't be going around behind our backs. Come and talk to us and see what we can do about it.
Long Prairie's now private Memorial Park will still welcome those wishing to honor veterans. Lou Ragoose, KARE 11 News.
The mayor says the land transfer could become final as soon as tomorrow. City leaders and veterans were especially sensitive about the cross because last year someone tipped it over and stole 8 flags.
Well, the heroics of 2 Good Samaritans caught on camera today as they jump into action after a driver went into a holding pond. The scene played out this morning at the Highway 169-494 interchange in the South Metro. Lou Ragoose has the story.
It could have been a lot worse.
When driving to work in sub-zero temperatures, water is the last thing you want to add to the equation.
And if you're not out of the water and out of the elements right away, your body essentially stops working.
According to State Patrol, a 23-year-old woman was heading south on Highway 169 and exiting onto eastbound 494 when the windows of her Suburban started fogging up.
At one point or another, she could not literally see where she was going.
Unable to see, Trooper Kadir Shatreet says she simply drove off the road and onto the partly frozen holding pond in the cloverleaf.
She didn't realize she actually stopped on this pond until her vehicle starts sinking.
The woman was able to break one of her car windows using a fire extinguisher she kept inside. 2 Good Samaritans stopped, used a pallet as a platform to stand on, and helped pull the woman to safety.
It all worked perfectly. They stopped, they quickly went into action and got her out of the car before any of us even arrived on scene.
The driver's vehicle was wrecked by the time the tow truck pulled it out of the icy water. But the woman?
She was cold, obviously. She was a little bit shaken up, but overall she was fine.
As everyone involved is now saying, it could have been much worse.
We reached one of the Good Samaritans who did not want to take credit. Instead, asked to thank fire crews and other first responders. State Patrol says this incident is a reminder in these temps to make sure everything with your vehicle is working properly, even the defroster. Guys.
That's an amazing story, all those people that jumped into action. Thank you, Lou.
Yep.
Well, they're learning more about the investigation that has benched 10 Gopher football players just 2 weeks before the Holiday Bowl.
KARE 11's Lou Ragoose has spent the day tracking developments. He's in our newsroom with the latest. Lou?
This is not the first time this season Gopher football players have been suspended. It happened in September, and those involved thought it was settled. But an internal university investigation has resulted in this latest suspension.
Makes the easy interception.
The incident that initially led to 4 Minnesota Gopher football players suspended in September was a sexual encounter at a Dinkytown apartment, according to police reports, court documents, and courtroom testimony. The police report states portions of the encounter were videotaped, and a detective notes, in the video, the woman appeared to be alert and the activity appears consensual. Hennepin County Attorney Mike Freeman decided not to charge Keontae Harden, Ray Buford, Dior Johnson, and Tamarian Johnson. The woman then filed for a restraining order against those 4 men and Carlton Jam, which kept those 5 players out of an additional football game. The woman agreed to drop the restraining order with an agreement the 5 men would stay 20 feet away from her. But now the U has indefinitely suspended those 5 players and 5 more: Kobe McCrary, Antonio Chenault, Mark Williams, Antoine Winfield Jr., and Seth Green. Attorney Lee Hutton, who represented several of those men, says via Twitter this stems from the very same incident after the U completed its own internal investigation. Lou Ragoose, KARE 11 News.
Right now, we're learning more about the investigation that led to the suspension of 10 Gopher football players.
KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is in the newsroom now with details. Lou?
And this is not the first time this season we've heard about a suspension involving Gopher players. The first happened back in September and involved 4 players. Minneapolis police investigated and the county attorney did not file charges. Then yesterday, word of another suspension involving the same 4 players and 6 more. According to a police report, a sexual encounter on September 2nd is what led to the first suspension. Police noted in the report the sexual encounter appeared consensual in videos taken during the act. The woman involved also filed for a restraining order against 5 players. She dropped that with the agreement the men would stay 20 feet away from her. But now those 5 men and 5 more are suspended by the university indefinitely. Their lawyer, via Twitter, says this stems from that same incident, September 2nd, resulting from a university internal investigation, and he says he intends to fight it. The university would not comment except to release the names of the players suspended. Their attorney says he will meet with university administrators tomorrow. Again, no one has been criminally charged in this case. We did just learn this hour that Mark Coyle, the athletics director, will give a statement to the media, so we'll bring that to you at 10 o'clock. Back to you.
Thank you, Lou.
Thieves try to ruin Christmas for one Twin Cities family after stealing most of their presents and other items in their house. But that couldn't break this family's spirit. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose has the story.
If you catch a glimpse of holiday family fun time with Willie Peters, Jessica Clover, and their kids,
You found Elsa? Yeah.
you'd never guess what just happened Christmas Eve.
He busted the whole screen off and came through.
Late Friday night or early Saturday morning, when the family was at Grandma's house,
That was a lot.
the couple says someone aimed the security lights toward the sky, entered through a window,
And he lifted this up
and
to get
stole
down.
3 wrapped Christmas presents under the family's tree.
Just frustrated, disappointed that we have people in the world that take advantage of holidays.
Those presents were donated because, like with many families, money is tight this time of year.
This is heartbreaking. I don't know.
The burglar also took a PlayStation, Xbox, cell phone, and jewelry.
My rings that my mom gave me were all in each one of these holes.
Plastic toy jewelry belonging to 7-year-old Serenity,
Disappointed.
as well as taking her sense of security in her own home.
I was scared like the person who stole stuff was still in the house.
It puts a damper on the holiday. It takes a lot. You just have to just kind of buckle down and see the big picture.
With that big picture in mind,
You're cheating, Missy.
the family still enjoyed the holiday together. The kids, luckily, still had some presents to open at Grandma's house, but to hear Serenity say it, perhaps even that wasn't needed.
They didn't really steal all of our Christmas because they didn't steal the stuff that we had inside of each other, so we could share the stuff that we had inside of each other.
Lou Ragoose, KARE 11 News.
Oh, that girl, my goodness. The crime happened on 44th Avenue North. Minneapolis police are investigating and ask anyone with information to please come forward.
First tonight, a Wisconsin husband and wife have been charged with stealing $190,000 from a small western Wisconsin church. Authorities say this was happening over several years. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is live in Hudson, Wisconsin with our top story. Lou?
Camille, this investigation took 1.5 years, and church members knew about it for 3 months before they went to police, because at first they wanted to protect this accused family. New Centerville United Methodist Church is a building more than 150 years old and a congregation less than 40 families strong. So a loss of $189,500 is significant, even if learning of the money's absence took time.
When somebody's in this position, they're in a trusted position, especially in a church, the oversight isn't like it would be in a business, whatever. People trust the person that's doing this.
St. Croix County District Attorney Eric Johnson says Kara LaVenture was the church treasurer between 2006 and 2015. And in that time, Johnson says, she and her husband embezzled nearly $190,000 by writing checks, taking cash, and spending on a credit card she opened in the church's name that other church members weren't even aware of. Police reports say at a closed church meeting in May 2015, LaVenture admitted she had stolen $39,000 over 3 years, and with her husband planned to pay it back in 3 installments. At first, the church council didn't want to press charges and initially tried working with the family. According to police reports, church council members kept looking into the numbers and kept finding more and more money was missing, until finally the church's insurance company told them if any of the loss was to be covered, they would have to call police.
The appropriate punishment is fairly significant when you're stealing long-term from a church institution.
Johnson says the fact the victim in this case is a church and its members means the punishment, if the couple is found guilty, will likely be harsher. And these charges each carry up to 10 years in prison. Police still don't know what the motive might have been. Church members aren't commenting on the case. I reached Michael LaVenture. He doesn't want to comment on the charges he and his wife face, but he indicated that he believes the truth will come out in court. The church is insured for up to $100,000 here. Back to you.
Okay, well, thank you, Lou. Tonight, we're learning more about a teacher who is suing the St. Paul Public School District after she says administrators failed to protect her from a student who assaulted her. KARE 11's Lou Goose is in the newsroom with our top story. Lou?
Camille, the 12-year-old student later admitted to the assault, pleaded guilty in Ramsey County Juvenile Court earlier this year. But now the teacher claims in a lawsuit the school didn't do enough to help her, then retaliated against her for speaking to the media.
Candace Egan is a substitute teacher who was working with the St. Paul Public School District. One day in March, leading a 7th grade class at Creative Arts Secondary School, her lawyer Doug Micko says the students were misbehaving, especially one boy who wouldn't put away his cell phone.
She confiscated the phone, and he turned his attention on her and became verbally abusive and actually assaulted her.
At that time, there were several other reports of student-on-teacher violence in the St. Paul Public School District. So when contacted by a Pioneer Press reporter, Egan gave an interview about the issue, saying she hopes the district and parents will acknowledge that something's really wrong and changes will be made in policy. But now, in a lawsuit, Egan claims the school district, days later, removed her from every scheduled teaching job.
The reason given was, according to Teachers on Call, that the school district wasn't happy with how Ms. Egan had handled the assault incident.
The lawsuit also claims that the district was negligent because it didn't do more after prior assaults to prevent further violence, and also didn't respond when Egan called the office for help.
At the critical moment, when things were becoming very unruly and she called down, nobody came.
When reached, a district spokesperson said the school won't comment on pending litigation.
And Egan's attorney says the teacher hurt her shoulder in the assault and had to have surgery to fix it. Back to you.
All right, well, thank you, Lou.
For more than a year now, we've been investigating surprise medical bills, bills that people thought their insurance was supposed to pay for. Tonight, our Lou Goose has the story of a Minnesota man who fought his bill and won.
Date received, date processed.
As a computer, hardware, and software professional, Jay Craswell is detail-oriented.
I'm very perfectionist, like to the OCD level.
So when it came time to sign up for health coverage, Jay says he methodically went through his list of doctors and clinics one by one to make sure they were all in network. Important because Jay knew he had an expensive surgery coming up.
Everything was yes, yes, yes.
But after surgery, it was a different story.
And when I looked at this bill, everything was no, no, no. Out of network. I mean, everything.
Every single bill was processed out of network. Jay felt sick, thinking he made a mistake that would cost him $23,000.
Like on the stressometer that goes from 1 to 10, we're at 10.
And he's not alone. We've shown you stories from other customers of the same insurance plan, Blue Cross Blue Shield's Consumer Value Network.
I was crying.
People like Julie and Joel Smith, who also got surprise out-of-network bills.
It's a shell game. And now it says that she's not in network.
Jay didn't know there were others like him, but he was determined to prove he was not at fault.
Now it says that she is in network at 3 different places.
So he went back to the Blue Cross website and started to double-check.
If you ask it the same question repeatedly, it'll give you 2 different answers.
He even recorded a video of his computer screen as the website gave conflicting answers.
It'll say a yes in network, no in network.
About whether doctors were in network or out.
So how does that even work?
He's one of the few consumers who actually did all of his homework before purchasing a plan.
Attorney David Holt helped Jay appeal his bills, not just once, but 5 maddening times.
A second appeal with the Department of Health and Human Services, 2 appeals with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and 1 appeal with the Minnesota Department of Commerce.
But Holt says Jay's video proof of the computer glitch paid off. Blue Cross Blue Shield finally agreed to reverse all those bills.
The total amount that Jay owes right now is 0.
But Holt wonders why fixing the mistake took so long.
When you have a tool on your website that's telling people this is what you're going to get, and then they purchase based on that, and then they don't get that, and then you have to fight them for 9 months and get an attorney involved. I mean, that's ridiculous.
A Blue Cross Blue Shield spokesperson told us the company was able to identify and address the website issue involving their list of doctors and clinics. They say Jay was the only affected person they've heard from.
I was really upset.
The Smiths got their charges reversed too after they proved a different mistake on Blue Cross's website. But the question remains, have other Minnesotans been billed too much?
From the state's perspective, there should be some investigation into what exactly is going on and how many Minnesotans have been affected there.
It's truly hosed. Can I say that?
Lou Ragoose, KARE 11 News.
Developing this afternoon, a racially charged trial unfolding in Minneapolis. Just within the last 90 minutes, a jury was seated in the trial of a man who shot 5 people during a Black Lives Matter protest. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is live with that story tonight. Lou?
Yeah, Randy, Alan Scarcella admits that he shot those protesters. However, he's claiming self-defense. We heard opening statements from both sides late this afternoon. The prosecution telling jurors that this case isn't just about the shooting itself, but it's about how and why 5 young black men ended up shot by a white man with racist views. The defense countered, saying he may not like Alan Scarcella's views about black people, but he's not on trial for things that he said. This is a case hinging on race that began at a protest rooted in race. After a black man named Jamar Clark was shot and killed by Minneapolis police, dozens and soon hundreds of protesters, led by the group Black Lives Matter, began occupying the street in front of the 4th Precinct. Days later, that protest drew a white man named Alan Scarcella and his friends. Prosecutors allege Scarcella was there to stir things up. They allege he and his friends have a history of racist comments and views. At some point, protesters confronted Scarcella and the other men. Witnesses claim they were escorting them out of the encampment when Scarcella pulled out a handgun and began shooting, wounding 5 people. Scarcella claims he was there peacefully and was forced to shoot out of self-defense after an angry crowd surrounded them and wouldn't let them safely leave. 4 men were charged, but Scarcella, the only one who fired a weapon, faces far more serious charges. The jury will need to decide whether the evidence shows Scarcella feared for his life and felt no choice but to shoot, or whether the evidence shows his prior conversations indicate a desire to do harm to black people and whether he intentionally caused serious harm to the victims. Now, all 5 shooting victims survived, although one required surgery and lost nearly half the blood in his body after he was shot in the gut. Jury selection in this case was very meticulous because the jurors were asked about their views on Black Lives Matter and several racial issues. The jury, including alternates, is made up of 11 men and 3 women. All but 2 of them are white. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, Lou. Opening statements in the trial for the man charged with shooting 5 people during a Black Lives Matter protest.
This happened in November of 2015 during the Jamar Clark protest outside Minneapolis Police Department's 4th Precinct. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is live in Minneapolis. Lou?
Guys, this isn't a case of whether or not he did it. Alan Scarcella admits he shot 5 protesters. The question is, did he do it out of his hatred for black people or out of self-defense?
This is Black Powder Ranger.
In opening statements, the prosecutor told the jury this video clip will be a key piece of evidence in the trial. It shows the defendant, Alan Scarcella, and his friend Julio Suarez driving to the protest in front of the 4th Precinct 4 days before Scarcella shot 5 protesters.
They're locked and loaded.
The men were armed and using racial slurs. And Assistant County Attorney Judith Hawley says it is one piece of evidence that shows Scarcella hated black people and intended to do harm. At times, during a 2-week span, demonstrators ranged from dozens to hundreds of people in front of the 4th Precinct to protest the shooting death of Jamar Clark. The prosecution told the jury evidence will show in months and years leading up to the shooting, Scarcella texted friends his desire to shoot black people. Scarcella's attorney told the jury they may not like his attitude about black people and might not like things Scarcella has said, but the trial is about Scarcella's actions that night. He said evidence will show Scarcella and his friends were surrounded, pushed, shoved, and punched. He says Scarcella feared for his life and the life of his friend Nathan Gustafson, who had been punched to the ground. And he says Scarcella thought he saw someone with a weapon and fired his gun because he thought he and his friend would be killed. Gustafson and 2 other men are charged with riot for their roles that night. The 5 shooting victims all survived, and they are expected to testify. Suarez, that man we showed on the initial video, he wasn't charged with anything. The prosecutor said that he'll testify as well. Julie?
This afternoon, more testimony in the trial of a man charged with shooting 5 people at a Black Lives Matter protest. The focus, racially charged videos. Lou Ragoose joins us now live. Lou?
Julie, most of the testimony today came from the friend of the defendant, Alan Scarcella. Julio Suarez said he wanted to get some internet fame and get some laughs out of fellow members of a message board consisting of weapons enthusiasts. So they showed the jury 2 videos shot by Suarez in which he and Scarcella make several racially derogatory comments. The 2 men visited the protest outside of the 4th Precinct in response to the police shooting of black man Jamar Clark. In the videos, they made fun of the protesters for the audience of the message board. 4 days later, Scarcella and the 3 other friends returned, and that's when the shooting happened. Several court observers, including the father of Jamar Clark, are pessimistic about the outcome of this trial and upset the jury is nearly all white.
There should be some blacks in there, and it's just like everything else, man. Ain't nothing gonna be done about it. And then if it is done, it's just gonna be a small charge, some kind of little misdemeanor, and that's it, He should be on first-degree attempted murder charge.
The only 2 non-white jurors include a man of Indian descent and another man who's mixed race and did not specify beyond that. I'm told the original pool of 40 random jurors consisted of hardly any African Americans to start with, and 2 women right off the bat had to be removed because of close connections to either this case or having family members in the police department. I'll have more on today's testimony coming up at 6. Julie?
In other news tonight, we are continuing to follow the trial of the man who shot 5 people at a Black Lives Matter protest stemming from the Jamar Clark case. Today was the first full day of questioning in Alan Scarcella's case. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose was in the courtroom, and he joins us live. Lou?
Julie, this case continues to be all about race as the prosecution aimed to leave an impression with the jury by opening its case with racially charged videos.
Oh my God, he's gonna die, guys. He's gonna die.
Ugly racial comments.
He's been culturally enriched. I can't do anything for him. I'm gonna have to shoot him.
Were on full display as the jury began to see evidence in the Alan Scarcella trial. The man you see dancing here in camouflage is Scarcella, the defendant.
If I get in trouble for yelling master race, there's only one final solution.
The voice you hear is Julio Sanchez.
Stay white.
Scarcella's friend, who drove with him to the Black Lives Matter protest outside the 4th Precinct 4 days before Scarcella returned with 3 different friends. On that first night, Suarez live streamed these videos, which the prosecution showed the jury while Suarez took the witness stand. The prosecution says they show an intent to stir things up at the protest and show Scarcella hated black people. The 2 went to the protest armed. The videos were hard for some courtroom observers to watch.
Yeah, it was hard, because it definitely showed what those guys was out there for.
James Clark is the father of Jamar Clark and the grandfather of one of the men Scarcella shot. The defendant is claiming self-defense.
How can it be self-defense, when them guys had guns, And my grandson and his friend, they didn't have no guns, They were just walking, going on about their business,
Suarez testified that Scarcella and the 3 friends came to his apartment after the shooting, and one of them was bleeding and missing a tooth. He said they looked in shock, like they'd been in a firefight. And that's the type of testimony that's important to the defense because Scarcella claims he only fired because he feared for his life. We could hear from some of the 5 shooting victims when testimony resumes tomorrow. Julie?
All right. Thank you, Lou. Well, the trial of the man charged with shooting 5 Black Lives Matter protesters continued today, with the jury being shown never-before-seen surveillance video. Lou Ragoose joins us live with that story. Lou?
Julie, that high-quality video was taken by the Minneapolis Police Department, and although it set the scene quite nicely for the jury, it showed practically everything except the moment of the shooting. In the video that you can see 4 men standing at a fence, very similar to this screenshot we're showing you from this City Pages article, and you see protesters begin to approach them. A police detective testified that the 4 men were the defendant, Alan Scarcella, and 3 other suspects, Nathan Gustafson, Daniel Macy, and Joseph Backman. You see a couple dozen people surround the men and the crowd begins to move all as one around the corner. But the shooting happens outside the frame of the video, and next you see people running back into frame and more people scattering. So the jury will not be able to tell from the video whether the shooting was done in self-defense. They'll have to make that determination based on what happened before and after the shooting and based on eyewitness testimony. So I'll show you more of that eyewitness testimony coming up at 6.
All right, thank you, Lou. Today, the prosecution continued to present its case against the man accused of shooting 5 people at a Black Lives Matter protest.
It happened after the Jamar Clark shooting in November of 2015. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose has been in the courtroom all day. He's live now with the latest. Lou?
Today, jurors finally got to watch a video that was taken the night of the shooting. But those hoping the video would tell the story were likely disappointed. Surveillance video can often make a jury's decision easier, but the surveillance video in Alan Scarcella's trial leaves one giant gap the jury will need to figure out. The Minneapolis Police Department's camera at the 4th Precinct captured something similar to this: 4 men standing near the fence approached by protesters. We learned the 4 men were the defendant Alan Scarcella and 3 other suspects, Nathan Gustafson, Daniel Macy, and Joseph Backman. In the video, you see a couple dozen protesters surround them, and within moments, the whole crowd moves around the corner and soon out of the camera's view. The shooting happens off camera. Then you see people scattering back into frame. That means the jury will have to rely on eyewitness testimony to determine whether the shooting was in self-defense. 2 days after the shooting, Wesley Martin, one of the victims, told us this.
I heard the N-word, and after that, everybody started rushing towards him. So we got to 14th and Morgan, and all you hear is pow, 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 pow.
And the last witness of the day backed up that story, telling the jury she heard one of the suspects use the N-word shortly before the shooting. And other testimony today included a surgeon who testified that one of the victims would have died from his gunshot wound if it had not been for life-saving surgery. And police officers testified about the chaos that followed the shooting, with many of the protesters swearing at them and claiming that police had something to do with the shooting. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Lou.
A big road project set to get underway in a matter of hours, and how it will affect thousands of commuters.
The project on Highway 169, delayed not once but twice, got going at around 8 o'clock this evening, with crews setting up cones and barriers. It is expected by 2 o'clock tomorrow morning the highway will be completely closed between Edina and Minnetonka.
Now this will affect some 90,000 people who drive this stretch of road every single day, and it's not a short-term headache. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is out live tonight with more on the project and how long it's going to last and exactly what drivers need to know about it. Lou?
Yeah, Camille and Zach, the on-ramp here in Hopkins is closed. It's filled with construction equipment. At 2 a.m., the highway will be shut down and 90,000 people per day will be affected. Many of those drivers we talked to today still haven't figured out which detour will work best for them. Drivers, hopefully you're ready.
It's going to be a massive headache.
The Highway 169 project is finally underway.
My sister lives in Maple Grove, my mom lives in Elk River, so we're on 169. That's our route.
Delayed once for weather, and again so utility cables running under the bridge could be secured. Now 169 is closed in both directions from 7th Street to Bren Road, and will stay that way for the next 10 months. An even longer stretch will see lane restrictions and ramp closures at times. The biggest part of the project is replacing the 40-year-old bridge over 9 Mile Creek, falling apart from road salt and drainage problems. Now the biggest problem for commuters is finding their new route.
I haven't figured that out yet.
No idea. No idea at all.
MnDOT suggests detours on the nearest north-south freeways, Highway 100 and Interstate 494, both of which are at least 3 miles away from 169.
494 is always a mess too. So I really don't know what we're going to do.
While some drivers suspect side streets will be full with exploration.
Yes, I imagine alternate routes are going to be very busy for a while.
As many rely on navigation apps to find the quickest way.
Trusting Google for everything.
The contractor has 272 days to finish, so hopefully by October 22nd, the cars are back on Highway 169.
I feel like it's going to be a big hassle kind of to get up there, but you deal with it.
And last week we talked about how important it is for this project to get started as soon as possible, because a lot of those later stages of the project, including resurfacing the road, have to be done before it gets too cold in the fall. So we're pushing back to late October already. Not a lot of wiggle room there, so it's good that they get started tomorrow, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lou. Let the exploring begin.
Who shot 5 protesters at a Black Lives Matter rally. Alan Scarcella arguing he was acting in self-defense. KARE 11's Lou Raguse has been following the trial from the start, and he joins us now with the verdict just down. Lou?
Julie, the jury found Alan Scarcella guilty on all counts. That's guilty of first-degree assault, guilty of second-degree assault, and guilty of riot. The verdict was read in the courtroom. It was packed, included one of the shooting victims in the gallery. Someone let out a cheer as the first guilty verdict was read. Now, this case goes back to November 2015. There was a large protest in front of Minneapolis' 4th Precinct over the police shooting of a man named Jamar Clark, a black man. And on one of those nights, there was a shooting involving a group of 4 white men that showed up. Alan Scarcella was the one who fired the shots. He was the one on trial here. He claimed self-defense, but the jury sided with the prosecution, which argued from the beginning that Scarcella was a racist who went to that rally to stir things up and find a way to shoot a black person. Now, this was not an easy case for the prosecution. There was a lot of video evidence to consider, but there was no video of those critical seconds when the shooting happened. And so that allowed the defense at some times to use the video to its advantage, to say that they were there to videotape and observe the rally, observe the protest. And then at a certain point, they say that they were manhandled and forced away and assaulted and were not allowed to return to their cars and were forced to shoot out of self-defense. However, clearly the jury, after 2 weeks of testimony and 1 day of deliberation today, the jury sided with the prosecution, found Alan Scarcella guilty of all counts. Now, that most serious count of assault in the first degree, that carries up to 20 years in prison. There will be a sentencing hearing coming up in the coming weeks. It's important to remember that all the victims survived, all the shooting victims, but one suffered very serious injuries, and a doctor testified that he would have died if it weren't for emergency surgery immediately following the shooting. The verdict again here is guilty on all counts, and there was a cheer in the courtroom when the verdict was read. A lot of interest for Black Lives Matter protesters and others following this trial. And it went in the prosecution's way. Julie?
All right. Thank you so much, Lou Raguse. An excellent job on reporting this story throughout. We appreciate it. And we'll have more coming up tonight at 6. Also, well, a developing story now in Minneapolis where a jury just convicted the man who shot and injured 5 Black Lives Matter protesters. Lou Raguse was there when the verdict was read and joins us live. Lou?
Julie, this case was all about race. Alan Scarcella, who for years the evidence showed sent text messages littered with the N-word and racist jokes, claimed self-defense in the shooting of 5 black men. But in the end, the jury didn't buy it, convicting him on all counts. Now, the backdrop of this case was the police shooting of Jamar Clark, a black man, and the protest that followed outside the 4th Precinct in Minneapolis. Scarcella says he and his friends went there just to observe and live stream from his phone. Within minutes, he was surrounded by a crowd of angry protesters that followed the men back toward their car. But before reaching the car, Scarcella fired 8 times, wounding 5 people, including Cameron Clark, whom we spoke with after the verdict.
He went down there, provoked, said racist slurs. He lured us up the street, and that's when he fired shots at it because he knew where the camera was that was around the precinct.
Now, this wasn't an easy case for the prosecution, but there was one piece of evidence that stood out to me as I covered this trial. It was a text message sent long before the shooting by Scarcella in which he basically made a joke about provoking a black person in order to give him an excuse to shoot one. Now, the prosecution argued that that's essentially what happened here, and the jury seemed to agree. It was very effective. Julie, back to you.
And an interesting note, I know before the trial there were several people who were upset because of the racial makeup of the jury, which was predominantly white, but obviously still returned a guilty verdict.
Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, the jury in the end consisted of 10 white people, 1 East Indian American and 1 mixed race man, so no African Americans on the jury, but this was a relatively quick verdict, just 1 day of deliberation after a pretty lengthy more than 2 week trial.
Well, you were there for the majority of it with great reporting. Thank you so much, Lou. You may have heard that the Super Bowl is coming to Minnesota, and that means a lot of people will need a place to stay. There is certainly money to be made by homeowners who are willing to rent out their homes for the big game. But before you put up your listing, one woman wants you to see what happened to her not once, but twice. KARE 11's Lou Raguse reports.
We've got chicken wings and Topper's Pizza.
Heather Harnell didn't expect to spend her Monday cleaning up from a wild Super Bowl party.
We've got more burn marks, just food, debris.
That's because Heather didn't throw a party. Her guests staying in her apartment through the website Airbnb did.
We were really clear, about expectations. There were only supposed to be 2 guests here.
After seeing via security footage that far more than 2 guests entered the home, Heather's business partner confronted them.
How are you going to justify all the extra guests?
He noticed the damage.
You know that we're going to have to pay to replace that, right?
Then kicked the extra partiers out.
If another person walks in this unit, I'm calling the cops.
But their nightmare didn't end.
Missing sheets, missing pillows.
Heather says later that night, the renters stole everything from bedding to dishes in the kitchen cupboard. And, seen here on camera, Heather says they hauled out her new smart TV. Meantime, they left behind little more than a pair of high heels, fake nails, and a whole lot of trash.
If all this looks and sounds familiar, it's because it is. This is the second time this has happened to Heather.
In October, the same thing happened during the Ryder Cup.
TV's gone.
Leaving Heather out $15,000.
There's burnt stuff everywhere.
She estimates losses this time at least $3,000.
People need to know that this stuff is happening.
With next year's Super Bowl held in Minnesota, Heather knows a lot of people will be renting out their homes through vacation rental websites. And that's why she wants to share this story.
Why in the world would you do this to someone? That's just not how I was raised.
Lou Ragoose, KARE 11 News.
An Airbnb spokesperson told us the company will help Minneapolis police any way they can. Now, there are a few red flags you can watch out for if you plan to rent out your property on sites like Airbnb. First, local renters. Why would someone need a place to stay in their own hometown? Second, last-minute renters. And third, anyone looking to stay for just one night.
Well, we're always thankful when a family is willing to share their painful story in hopes of making a difference. Tonight, a northern Minnesota couple is sharing their tragic loss, hoping to finally get answers and to draw attention to something happening way too often on Minnesota's highways. Lou Ragoose has their story.
This was probably when he was in 7th or 8th grade.
They built their Moorhead home for a family of 4.
Kind of an overflow of his stuff here.
But given a tour, you quickly realize they built it for their children.
That's all Connors. Those are all of Zachary's.
But now, Ray and Kathy Qualvog's home is empty, frozen in time.
We still have his laundry that I had just put in his laundry basket.
This is how we left it, and that's how I'm going to leave it. And
ever since the day they lost both their sons on a Minnesota highway.
I just saw my kids at 8:15, and it was at 9:08 they were not alive. On a beautiful June day. It's just hard to describe, I guess, hard to believe. Still hard to believe. I still can't believe it.
Zachary Qualvog was driving his brother Connor and 2 other high school classmates to a basketball tournament. They were on I-94 near Fergus Falls when his pickup went off the road and rolled. Zach and Connor died. The other 2 boys survived. According to the crash report, one of the survivors told State Patrol the last thing he remembered was a semi-truck in the lane next to them drifting into their lane. Quote, "When he crossed over, I knew he was going to hit us."
The boy in the back seat that did survive remembers Zach saying, "Geez," and whipping the wheel over, and that was the end.
The truck didn't stop and the trucker never came forward. Despite State Patrol asking for help from trucking companies and the Truckers Association, to this day, that truck hasn't been found.
Just come forward, tell me what has happened. I've got a generous reward out there. I just need to know the truth. I need to know what happened on that day.
The Qualvog story is a painful example of something that happens too often on Minnesota highways. Large commercial trucks make up less than 5% of all registered vehicles in Minnesota. But according to State Patrol, when it comes to fatal multi-vehicle crashes, trucks were involved in more than 1 in every 4 between 2006 and 2015. That's a rate higher than the national average. State Patrol numbers show 543 people have died in these crashes in Minnesota in that 10-year period.
The trucking industry is a highly regulated industry from a safety perspective.
John Hausladen, the president of the Minnesota Trucking Association, says truck drivers are already limited on how often they drive and the number of hours they can drive. And many trucking companies already regulate how fast those trucks can go. He argues truck drivers aren't to blame.
Most of the time, it's not the truck driver's fault. It's a behavior of a car driver. It's distracted driving, it's aggressive driving, it is, impaired driving.
And the numbers back him up. State Patrol tracks the factors that lead to crashes when looking at all truck crashes over 10 years. More of those factors were caused by the truck driver. But in crashes when someone dies, the reasons for the crash were caused by the other driver 75% of the time. The top factors include failure to yield the right of way in 21% of crashes, driving left of center, no passing in 15%, and distracted driving or inattention in 14%. But troopers say the biggest difference in fatal crashes involving trucks is simple, and it all comes down to size.
One of the common things that we tend to hear from time to time is, this commercial motor vehicle driver cut me off changing lanes. Well, it's very important to remember that these drivers are pulling a trailer that may be 48 or 53 feet in length, and it's very hard to judge and gauge those distances.
According to the official State Patrol report, the Qualvog case was different. The investigator believes the semi in the right lane moved into the left lane, and Zachary steered left to avoid contact.
If the semi, big rig, is, kind of going back and he comes over on you, you're just, the natural inclination is to drive away from that.
It's been 20 months since the Qualvogs lost their sons. They don't have answers as to what could have prevented what happened to them. This blue truck with a white trailer is the one State Patrol believes didn't stop. The Qualvogs still hope by circulating these photos, the driver will come forward. Ray and Kathy say they live right now in search of answers.
It'll give us some peace. Just knowing what happened, that it was something that wasn't caused by my son, and he did everything he could.
Lou Bragoose, KARE 11 News.
The State Patrol has reopened the Qualvog case and is still looking for tips involving that blue semi with a white trailer that is believed to be involved. They're asking anyone with information to call the State Patrol. Road Safe America offers several tips for helping to avoid crashes between cars and semis. Here are a couple. Avoid blind spots around trucks. If you can't see a truck driver's face in the side mirrors, the truck driver can't see you. Also, do not cut in front of any large vehicle, including a truck, since they require much more distance to stop in comparison to cars. We'll have a link to all these tips on our website at kare11.com.
Thanks for joining us. We begin with a medical breakthrough. A drug that extends the life of dogs with cancer shows promise for people with an incurable form of the disease.
The drug was created and tested at the U of M Veterinary School. The researchers were floored by their findings, and it's the talk of the cancer world. KARE 11's Lou Bragoose takes a closer look at what this could mean for people.
You wouldn't know it by meeting them, but these pups at the University of Minnesota College of Veterinary Medicine are all battling cancer. And many of their owners now get to spend significantly more time with them.
We just never expected that it was going to work as well as it did.
Jaime Modiano and Antonella Borgatti led a study treating dogs with HSA sarcoma.
And so these are the cancer cells.
A fast-spreading, incurable cancer. They used a drug called EBAT, developed by another U of M professor.
We're killing the cancer and we're reestablishing the normal blood flow.
And the results amazed them.
I don't think I've ever been so excited in my life.
Only 38% of dogs that get this cancer survive 6 months after diagnosis. But of those that took the drug, 70% of them have lived that long. Velky here just crossed that milestone.
And one of the dogs treated with EBAT 4 years ago is still alive. Modiano calls it unprecedented. But of course, the bigger picture in this study is what this breakthrough could mean for people.
The hope is that we will be able to translate this drug for human use.
This drug has potential to help patients with a wide variety of cancers.
Canine HSA sarcoma is very similar to forms of sarcoma in people. The professors are optimistic it'll work as well as it did with the dogs, extending life with fewer side effects than other drugs on the market.
Our goal and our vision is to create a world where we no longer fear cancer, and every time that we create a new treatment that brings hope, we help to reduce the fear of cancer.
And now the next step. Cancer researchers at the U are working with the FDA to get a human trial set up. And doctors believe it's very possible that that will start within the next year or so.
So now we're looking at what, Lou? How far out before this possibly could be there for everybody?
Right. Well, these things take a lot of time. Once the trial starts, maybe within the next year, it'll take 3 years for the trial. and then they'll have to look at the results, evaluate how successful it was before submitting to the FDA for approval. Of course, some people who are sick will be able to participate in the trial itself.
All right.
Wow, great news. Thanks so much, Lou.
Thanks for joining us. We begin with breaking news at this hour.
We are learning of a serious construction accident at the bridge project on Highway 169. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is live in the area with what we know so far. Lou?
And guys, it is just a tragic scene out here as we've learned that a construction worker was crushed by a pipe. The truck is still sitting down here. We're on the south part of the 169 project. The road is all torn up, ready to be replaced. This is before the bridge starts. That truck is full of 50-foot long pipes that weigh 2,500 pounds each. That's more than 1 ton each. One pipe lays on the ground right now next to them. The crew, we were told by the Ames Construction Company, was unloading these pipes, and for whatever reason, one of the pipes slipped and it crushed, injuring one of those workers. He was rushed to the hospital by ambulance. We do not know his current condition, although State Patrol troopers told us that these injuries were very severe, and it's not good news up to this point. But we don't know if he will survive. The construction project here has been going on for just about a month now. They're going to replace that bridge just north of here on 169, and those big pipes are piling that they will pound into the ground so that they lay the road over it, and it offers stabilization to the road. Again, this afternoon, as it's pouring rain out here, they were unloading those pipes, and one of them slipped and crushed one of the workers. OSHA will be out here to investigate. I'm told that the construction crews will not be working tomorrow. As for what happens after that, we're still gathering information and learning more. We'll let you know when we have more information on it.
Well, Lou, our thoughts are certainly with everyone working on that project. And it's so severe, the injuries, that earlier it was reported that the man had died, correct?
Well, there were reports that he had died, but that's not official. He was taken to the hospital, and we're waiting to learn more. The Ames construction official that we talked to said that they don't know yet what his condition is. There's troopers with him at the hospital, so we expect to learn more tonight.
Thank you, Lou. Well, a suggestion for monitoring what kids wear to prom in one school district got a lot of people up in arms.
So much so, Osaka schools about 2 hours northwest of the Twin Cities had to clarify what they were considering and reassure families today it wasn't going to happen. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose explains.
Senior Hannah Lean is excited for her third prom at Osaka's high school. But a recent controversy that is the talk of the town made her apprehensive.
Well, I just felt it was really sexist because to only make the girls do it, I don't understand how that's really fair.
Following a recent school board meeting discussing prom dress code, the first sentence in the article in the local newspaper covering the meeting said girls who plan to attend the Osaka's high school prom will have to submit a photo of themselves wearing their chosen dress.
Girls are really judged on their bodies already, and to make us send a photo in to predetermine if we can wear it is just a little unnecessary.
The reasoning given by the school board, according to the Alexandria Echo Press article, was that screening the dresses ahead of time would prevent anyone from being embarrassed or turned away at the door the night of the prom if they didn't meet the dress code.
We are not going to ask for a photo from students, girls or boys.
Interim Osaka Superintendent Randy Bergquist says the photo requirement was just one idea discussed, but that the board didn't vote to make it policy. And if it were to be voted on,
I would be totally against it.
You don't think it's a good idea?
No.
And how come?
Well, because I think you're singling out girls as opposed to boys. I'm not for this at all, and the Osaka schools would not be for getting any picture ahead of time.
It just seems not right.
Hannah is relieved to hear the district is now walking back this plan, and now once again she's looking forward to prom.
Yeah, I actually am. I think it'll be a lot of fun, especially once this whole picture thing blows over.
So now there's a little dispute about whether this was just a big misunderstanding or whether the district is backpedaling now because of the backlash. And the reporter who covered the school board meeting said that she double-checked the facts with board members before publishing the article, and they didn't have any problem with what she was writing.
And you were saying that when they're saying we might have to turn people at the door and that would be embarrassing,
Right.
that they've never had to do that before.
Yeah, this
so.
superintendent is new. This was his first day on the job, but to his understanding, they've never had to turn anyone away. So there's a question, why was this a possibility of being a problem in the first place?
All right, sure does get emotions running high quickly.
does.
Yeah, they were all
doesn't it,
talking
Lou?
about it.
Thank you, Lou.
Thanks.